Bruce Arians winning a Super Bowl would be just dynamite for the human race. It really would be. I mean,
like Andy Reid.
It would
Would
be,
that lock up Hall of Fame for Bruce?
It'd come out. You gotta think. The Bruce Arians football life is something else.
Sure is. 2-time Coach of the Year.
Well, you're also talking about how he got into coaching, and then how he got into head coaching.
Right.
It would not be a story outside of the rings that he won with the Steelers. A great final story for the Steelers, where they said he was retiring and he was driving back to his. Remember, he told us that on our podcast that he was driving with his wife back to, I think, what was it, Florida or something like that? They were just driving somewhere after the Steelers had said he was retiring, and he had no real intention of retiring. Right. And his phone rang, and he looked down, and it was an area code from Indianapolis. And his wife said, "Don't answer it." I think that was a story he told on our podcast. He answered it, and the Colts hired him.
Yeah.
Colts hired him, and then we all know Chuck Pagano got sick.
Yep.
And he strolls in and won Coach of the Year as an interim head coach. Hired by Arizona, wins Coach of the Year for Arizona. Damn near took the Arizona Cardinals to the Super Bowl.
Crazy.
And retires again. But this one was, he was literally sitting in that chair next to me on this set a couple of summers ago, saying he was definitely interested. This when the Browns job was open.
He was thinking about coming
coaching,
back.
but he needed to talk about his health, and the only way he would come back is if he could hand the offense off to somebody, because his wife and his family thought he might have an episode on the sidelines.
Didn't want to be the play caller because of the
And Byron Leftwich was that guy.
Yeah. And then he gets gifted Tom Brady.
And he gets, he gets Tom Brady.
Fantastic.
Well, he's got the receivers.
Oh, yeah.
And the receivers that are behind these guys are terrific too. I mean, they can coach up the receivers there. As you know, Evans and Godwin both went out, and they had guys with name tags that were running routes.
At the end there, yeah.
On the game that I called last year, where I unfortunately needed name tags for the quarterbacks. Calling Watson Winston and Winston Watson. So much during a 5-minute period that my wife is texting me saying, are you hearing what you're saying?
Are you all right?
You need to, Susie texted me literally saying, you need to talk about the elephant in the room here. You misnaming some of these guys. But if Aaron,
that would be awesome.
You'd have to start talking about what he's done in his career and how he's coached and all these greats and been there for these guys and has been a head coach of note. And then you got the Buccaneers in 2020 having Brady and Gronk and Evans and Godwin and a line that can protect Brady, and Brady's smart enough to protect himself, and a staff that can feed Brady, and a roster that Brady can utilize to, one would think, a remarkable amount of success.
They have a tough schedule.
Defensively, well, everybody in that division
They've
does,
got a
don't
tough
they?
Schedule. Well,
They start in the Superdome. And then home for Carolina, at Denver, home for the Chargers, at Chicago. I mean, these are winnable games for Tom Brady in New England. So you have to figure he's coming to play here. Home for Green Bay. Man, that would be just wonderful.
Green Bay, Kansas City.
At Vegas, at the Giants, home for New Orleans. You know, heaven forbid we catch a break here as the human race in this country, and therapeutics and something happens to make this a more manageable situation for us, and we know who's got it, and we can quarantine those who have it, and we can be contact tracing those who are around those who have it. And then suddenly, the end of the year, you can start getting fans in stadiums. I know that sounds like a pipe dream, doesn't it?
It does.
They're talking about, as Troy Vincent, who's in charge of, the football operations for the NFL, said yesterday that Sean Payton in a competition call mentioned bubbling up for the playoffs in the same way that Major League Baseball's thinking.
Sounds like a great idea.
Great
so
plan.
you could bubble up in the Tampa area. You know what you could do too is you could bubble up with Gasparilla. have a party, have playoffs. Right? I mean, as long as you bubble up and you test everybody, it doesn't matter how many people are in there, right?
Can we be there? Because that sounds great. Sign me up.
I mean, this is the conversation that the NFL is having right now.
Like the Super Bowl is going to be like.
Well, the Super Bowl in the first week of February. Look, we shouldn't get ahead of ourselves. But you heard what Arians had to say, that he is a man who is obviously at risk, feels fine in the office. That's what I have heard from everybody in the NFL, that the protocols and that what's going on at the facilities are so set up. And you know how routinized people get and coaches can get, that they're set up that as long as everybody does well at home, they're not going to bring anything in, and they think they can get this season done. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.